Welcome to Cardinals Cover 2 with Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. Cardinals Cover 2 is brought to you by Arizona Cardinals Podcasts. Visit azcardinals.com/podcasts. From the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, here's Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki.
Well, draft week has arrived, although we are still 3 days away from an actual selection by the Arizona Cardinals, who have, if you haven't heard, the number 1 overall pick. But we are actually here, and now it's just days. It's not weeks or months. Sometimes it's felt like years, but now just 3 days. A long weekend, if you will.
Yeah, and we do a great job giving you the countdown, so I think we got to get rid of the days and start going hours and then minutes.
Seconds, too, if you go to azcardinals.com. There is a countdown.
There is a countdown, but it's days. We're going to break it down to hours. I'm actually excited that the Cardinals are going to be on the field this week.
That's true. We'll get into that.
Yeah.
But I do have one more announcement with regards to the draft, because we've been talking about how on the second day, rounds 2 and 3, there's going to be Carlos Dansby, Larry Centers are going to be making some draft picks. Well, on day 3, rounds 4 through 6, the Cardinals are actually going to be in Tombstone, and they're going to have some former players helping announce picks. Kyle Vandenbosch, Jeremy Bridges, and Ben Patrick, and their 4th round selection, 103 overall, is actually going to be at the OK Corral.
Nice.
How cool is that?
That's cool. You've been to both?
I have.
OK Corral?
I have. Yes.
Me too.
Yes.
My dad used to come in town. We used to go to Tombstone all the time.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun, and I like what the NFL and the Cardinals have done here. We've seen this over the last couple of years. David Johnson went up to the Grand Canyon and had announced a draft pick. If it wasn't last year, it was the year before. But it's good because then you get to go around the entire state and kind of open it up, and fans. And there's more information up on azcardinals.com. But a big day Saturday in Tombstone, Arizona.
And I want to say a season ticket holder is going to make one of the picks.
That's right. Matthew Bennell will make the 7th round selection, number 248, from Nashville, Tennessee. So a lot of Cardinal fans are going to be making the trip to Nashville as well. Kyle Odegaard and Lisa Matthews going to Nashville on Wednesday. So they'll be there covering it for azcardinals.com. And of course,
we got it covered, A to Z.
Here on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So it is that time here on a Monday, time to take off, let you know what's ahead on the show here this afternoon. We'll hear from Josh Rosen. His name certainly has been predominantly featured in the past few months. When it comes to the draft, wide receiver would appear to be a need. We'll talk about that. We invite your questions via social media using the hashtag CardsCover2. And on this day, April 22nd, we honor the man who lost his life 15 years ago, Pat Tillman, and some rare footage you do not want to miss. We'll do that a little bit later on here this afternoon, honoring not only the player, but more importantly, the person, both on and off the field. But first things first, the news of the day. And yes, it is a big week. It is draft week. But MJ, as you mentioned, on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, a voluntary veteran minicamp here at the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center. And this is 3 days of 40 teams who hired a new head coach. So the Cardinals getting an extra week of work. It's phase 3 of the offseason strength and conditioning program. So a little bit different than phase 2, and we're during the OTA. So this mini camp, you'll be allowed to have coaches on the field. Team periods are permitted, and that includes offense versus defense, and helmets permitted. Now, what you can't do, no live contact, no one-on-one drills, and no pads, no shells, but helmets. And the big thing is actually putting what you've learned in the classroom out onto the field with a brand new coaching staff.
Yeah, the first time the coaches can be on the field. Now, these players have been here with the strength and conditioning program. That's more in phase 1. And then they also been able to meet with their position coaches, and so they can start to learn the new systems under Vance Joseph, even though a lot of guys have played in the 3-4. And then obviously learning a brand new offense under Cliff Kingsbury and Tom Clements, and probably some new blocking schemes up front from Sean Kugler. So this is a golden opportunity. Obviously, it's the start of the process. I mean, they're going to continue to install Probably 3 to 4 or 5 times. We'll do another install when we get to training camp and go throughout the preseason. So this is really the first time, besides in the meetings face-to-face, you can actually be on the field. And that's got to be exciting from some guys that, are thinking, I got to catch on to this new playbook, offense, defense, and special teams. And because if I want to be around, I want to be able to play faster, not think. Now, it's going to be a work in progress. I don't care if you're a 15-year veteran, you're learning something new. You got a different coaching staff. So I think it's start of the process, but still a long ways to go.
The one exception, though, might be special teams because Jeff Rogers is returning as special teams coordinator, and in that side, with regard to the kicker, the punter, and long snapper, all returning. So you have those guys are maybe a little bit ahead and maybe not swimming so much compared to what this offense and then defensively, it's not, I would say, relearning almost because you're going back to a 3-4, but it's just it's muscle memory for a lot of this. Like, what did we do 2 years ago? And then offensively, yeah, you're right. It's going to be brand new across the board. Now, there might be some familiarity, some similar concepts that guys remember from back in the college, or maybe a variation of what they used to do on the NFL level. But 2 weeks of classroom work, and now finally getting on the field. And this is a big week because you're getting ahead now on this rookie class that will be coming in at the end of this month.
Yeah, and the fact that they've been in meetings for up to 90 minutes, that's the max time when you look at phase one. What I meant on special teams, and you're right, I mean, they do have a couple kickers on the roster. Of course, Zane Gonzalez, to me, it's his job to lose. They like what he did last year, and obviously you like to settle in with a young guy at that position for a long time. And obviously Aaron Brewer, and then the weapon Andy Lee. I'm talking more about the coverage units.
That's true.
Guys that have different assignments. I mean, we know at least a handful of guys last year made the roster strictly on special teams, the 53-man roster, the Dennis Gardex and Zeke Turners and Jalen Tollivers. And we know Brandon Williams, even though he hasn't played the corner position, considering a third-round pick, he's become a really good special teams player. And we know they brought in Farrell Cooper. They got some new faces, and you wonder, you don't want to put your starters on there, but I think we're going to see some guys that have, going to play on teams because field position is huge. So I think it's more just getting some new faces and new bodies possibly based on what they've done so far on the return units.
And I don't know how much.
And the coverage units.
Yeah, I don't know how much, if any, of this week will be open to the media, but how much does Cliff Kingsbury and Vance Joseph, do you say, let's throw everything out there and see what you get right away, and then we can work off of that? Or is it, okay, we're going to do this, step 1, step 2, and do it in increments? I wonder how that works, because sometimes if you just throw it all out there and figure out what you do well, then you can kind of go backwards as opposed to trying by step-by-step process. I mean, there's different ways to learn new things, and you just kind of find a way this group of players on either side of the field is best at learning that.
If that was the first time that they were on the property, like we didn't have that first phase, but they've had some install, and so they would have some knowledge. Now, again, you're right. You don't want to go out there and make a lot of mental errors. Mental errors are not lining up in the right position, blocking the wrong guy, and we're not going to see that here. But you can just look at some of the different formations. So hopefully the guys that have been here, they got a little bit of a head start. Now, I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, because a lot of guys are coming here. Yes, they played in the 3-4, but Vance's terminology, his vocabulary could be a little bit different. They're going to attack. We know they're going to play man press coverage on the outside. So even if you're a veteran guy, you still have to learn some new things. And when you hear new voices, you can coach a lot of different ways, but coaching comes down to teaching. So I would think guys that have been here, they may not be perfect, but they're a little bit ahead of the curve. And so, but it's a great question. Do you put it all in, or do you go in increments where you don't want to overload these guys where they're thinking too much? Because when you get to, obviously the OTAs, you want these guys to be able to play a little bit faster, and then obviously when we get to training camp.
We know head coach Cliff Kingsbury is looking forward to getting these guys on the field, and if you caught the latest episode of Cardinals Flight Plan, you saw that there are some new lettering, new words on the hallway that these players pass going from the locker room to the field, and it's 3 words: compete every day. And Kingsbury explained that phrase to Paul Calvisi and Lisa Matthews last week on the Kingsbury Chronicle podcast.
It's just a mentality. Come to work, whatever you're doing, let's make sure we're competing to be the best. And that's what those guys are about. That's why they're here in the NFL, is they want to be the best and they want to compete against the best. And so we're going to have that mentality every day.
And it's every drill, every meeting, and every practice, and be better than you were yesterday. And I think that starts right away.
Yeah, and if you're watching us on azcardinals.com or Periscope or YouTube, you could see the lettering on the wall. Yeah, every coach is different. Everyone has their slogan. And to me, it's really, when I started covering the NFL 25 years ago, and I was just a young reporter, I didn't know what I was doing. I was just gathering sound.
And now you're an old reporter? Older.
Okay. But I always hear, get better today. And you're like, these guys have been great since high school. You know what I mean? Been patted on the back in college, and you don't get to the NFL if you don't have some kind of talent. But it's true. I mean, Larry Fitzgerald tries to get better every single day. Now, again, learning a new offense, but you don't want to get complacent. So when you hear that, it actually happens. And guys will tell you they got better today. You'll go to the locker, I got better today, meaning I didn't have any mental errors in practice. You don't want to be that guy that has 3 mental errors, and when they watch the film after practice, you're getting called out. So it's just interesting, the approach. But at the same time, it's going to be a progress though, and a process.
Yeah, it's again 3 days: Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, voluntary mini camp because this team hired a new head coach. But again, still voluntary. Players don't have to be here, although I would expect a great turnout as we saw during the first 2 weeks of Phase 1. And yes, no reason why Josh Rosen wouldn't be here. He's been here. We've heard that he's been the first in the building since this program, off-season strength and conditioning program, began. So he's been here. He just hasn't spoken to the media. He did, though, last week, or actually a few weeks back. It was released last week, but he did open up and speak to SITV. This was during a recent visit to the Grand Canyon. Rosen and his buddies just kind of hanging out, and during this trip is when he opened up about what his first season was like and then what he's been going through here this offseason.
I think the season probably went as poorly as it could possibly go, but within that, I had an unbelievable time. I think when people talk about like you can't listen to criticism or don't ever read articles, like you have to be aware of what's going on to a certain extent. So like I definitely understand the situation. I mean, it's annoying, but like it is what it is. Football is a business, and I definitely respect the higher ups and their decisions. Like we won 3 games, and each one of those wins, to me, it felt like we won the Super Bowl. And like that feeling is so intoxicating, and that's why I just want nothing more than to be a part of a team next year and have the same opportunities to go out and compete. I think like the best advice I've ever gotten in life from so many different people is control what you can control, and whatever decisions are made, it's my duty to prove them right if they keep me and prove them wrong if they ship me off.
A very honest Josh Rosen there in that SITV clip from a few weeks back. And the quote that stood out to me, MJ, prove them right if they keep me, prove them wrong if they ship me off. And look, if you're not, as he said, annoyed by all of this talk, then you're just not human. And I think sometimes we lose the fact that these athletes that we hold to such high standards are human beings. They make mistakes. They have egos. They have feelings. As much as we think that they're perfect, they get upset. They get discouraged, and all of this talk. If he's not feeling it, then you'd wonder why. But to hear him say, like, look, I'm going to be somewhere next season, and if here is where I'm at in Arizona, then I need to make sure that I'm the guy that they went up to get at number 10 and wanted me to be here. And if I'm not for whatever reason, then okay, then now it's my job with that other team to show the Cardinals what you're now missing.
Yeah, I mean, I've been thoroughly impressed with him. I mean, we got a chance to cover him last year, and he's a great locker room guy. I mean, players gravitated to him. It wasn't just talking to offensive players. He was talking to defensive players, stuff that he was able to see in practice. Why did you do that? So I'm not surprised. And, you took the quote where if it doesn't happen here, I'll prove him wrong, for paraphrasing. To me, what he said prior to that was he's learned in life from so many different people, and I'm sure it's been told to you, control what you can control. He can't control the situation here. Now, he knows what's at stake, but I think he's handling it. You talk to guys that have been around him for the last couple of weeks. He's the same guy. He's communicating with his teammates. Before these workouts started, he was putting a group together to throw the ball away from the facility. So he's doing everything in his power to be the starting quarterback for the Arizona Cardinals. Now, as he said, though, you got to control what you can control, and the Cardinals have to make a decision. But I've never questioned his work ethic. He's a deep thinker. Maybe people just don't know the person as much as we've been around him. I think you're starting to see the person. I think there was a lot of speculation coming out in the draft last year. He's a little different. Well, he thinks for himself. He came from a very affluent family, and he's not going to tell you what you want to hear. He's going to tell you what he thinks, and he's been really good about the NC2A. So I just think he's a deep thinker, and listen, I don't think you can go wrong with either or. I think he can succeed in Cliff's offense with the right protection, with the right weapons, the right running game, getting David Johnson more involved. I think he can succeed. Now the question is, how long would it take?
Yeah, so we'll have to wait and see what that decision or decisions are coming up later this week, specifically Thursday when the Cardinals make that pick at number 1. As we continue here on a Monday afternoon from the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, and of course broadcasting in our Bose QC35s. Go to Bose.com for more information. A reminder, if you ever miss a show, you can download as a podcast via Apple Podcasts, Google Play Music, SoundCloud, or TuneIn. And don't forget, all of your favorite Cardinals podcasts can be found at azcardinals.com/podcasts. All right, now to the draft talk. And again, 72 hours away, 3 full days of more speculation, more guessing than anything else. But azcardinals.com continues its The 1-at-1 series, in which Darren Urban and Kyle Odegaard have looked back at the last 30 number 1 picks overall and how they're impacted their team and the league overall. And we've had a number of them since our last show on Wednesday. And in fact, this takes us all the way up to 2018, last year's number 1 overall pick. But let's go back. 2014, linebacker Jadeveon Clowney, who has certainly come on to his own, 18.5 sacks the past 2 seasons. Of course, 2014 will be known for the Khalil Mack selection at number 5 overall by the Raiders. But then a run of quarterbacks in 2015, it was Jameis Winston. And the big debate there was Winston versus Marcus Mariota, much like the Peyton Manning-Ryan Leaf debate. And, of course, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers went with Winston. 2016 was Jared Goff. The Rams moved all the way up from number 15 to grab Goff. In 2017, it was defensive end Myles Garrett. And then last year, we all know quarterback Baker Mayfield, who a year ago this week was not on many people's radars for the Cleveland Browns at number 1 overall, and that was a surprise. Browns kept that very quiet, and we'll have to see if that's the case here in 2019 with the Cardinals.
Well, I mean, you're John Dorsey, and you draft a Patrick Mahomes, who's 6'3", 220, and then you look at just the profile of a Sam Darnold. Yeah, he turned the ball over, but you're projecting what these guys are going to do at the next level. And then Josh Allen, I mean, the guy can throw 70 yards. I don't know if it's going to get there accuracy-wise. So you look at a pocket passer, guys are 6'4", 6'3", 225. I mean, that fit the profile. And then probably 24 to 48 hours before the draft is when you start to thought, all right, this is possible. And here he pulls out Baker Mayfield. But last year at this time, a couple days before the draft, it was either Allen or Darnold.
Correct.
Because of the profile, the size, the arm strength. One played in a smaller conference and one played in the Pac-12. But here, they made the pick, and back-to-back years, John Dorsey has drafted Patrick Mahomes and Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, that's
he traded up for Mahomes.
Yeah, it's a pretty good run of draft history for John Dorsey and what he's been able to do. And of course, it landed him the Browns GM job as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned Goff.
Correct.
Goff looked like you can actually build a case that Rosen was better than Goff his first year.
Yes, that was
he won more games.
Oh yeah, Goff didn't win any games.
No, and he didn't start the season. They were 3-1. They beat the Cardinals, and then they lost 11 after the last 12 games. Maybe he lost 11 straight, but he didn't start the season. What do? They bring in Sean McVay. Now, obviously, they've done a better job drafting, signing Andrew Whitworth, going out and getting weapons. But, they got Gurley. Gurley was there, top 10 pick, coming off an ACL. They had Donald there. They had Quinn there. I mean, they had some players. But one change was the head coach. And look how well Jared Goff has played. Would you consider him a franchise quarterback?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the comparison a lot of people have pointed to, and we did it even back in January. You make that change at quarterback, at head coach. Is that enough to have the switch flipped on, and all of a sudden the Cardinals themselves have a Jared Goff with Josh Rosen, and of course the pieces that Steve Keim has acquired in this offseason as far as Robert Alford and along the offensive line. I mean, 10 new starters. If you go back to the end of last season in the acquisition when they claimed DJ Swearinger, you're going to see a lot of new faces on this team. The question is, will there be a new face at quarterback?
Yeah, and you throw in 10 draft picks and an undrafted free agent, so you're going to see a lot of new faces, especially when we get to after the draft. But, yeah, I mean, it's a tough decision. And, obviously the Cardinals are doing their due diligence. There's no leaks coming out of this building. So, I mean, it's everything you're reading and hearing is everyone's just trying to connect the dots and they're guessing. So, and I'm telling you, there's no leaks coming out of this building because Peter King did a recent interview, and he said that he does one mock, and he did his first mock today. And he said he usually has a connection with these either general managers or player personnel guys, and he's called the guy for years. Every year, give me 2 guys that you think will be there that you could pick. Now, we don't know who's going to fall, but he's just getting a projection. So now he's got to make a choice. He called this guy, and his guys helped him out for like 10 to 20 years. You know what he told him? I can't help you this year. Peter King also said that the teams in the top 6, that nobody's talking. There are no leaks coming out. So all this stuff you hear, and this is Peter King. He's dialed in. And he's saying this is an anomaly this year when it comes to teams talking. You see what the Raiders did.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not unusual to have
send
your scouts home
for Easter.
Yes.
But all those scouts, they were hired by Reggie McKenzie. So what he's saying is they're going to be hiring an entirely new scouting staff after the draft. Dave Gettleman, he sent his scouts home for Easter weekend. I think they're going to be at the facility. Belichick only has 4 guys in the draft room. Sometimes scouts don't even see the 120 board. So all this stuff you're hearing, it's more common than you think. Yes, it's Easter weekend, your scouts go out of town, but scouts do return. Some teams are saying, we'll see you after the draft. And some teams, whether you hire a new GM, there's always changes after the draft when it comes to scouting department. Always. And it's weird because you've used their services all year, and then now you're telling them, hey, thanks. But a lot of these scouts only have 2-year contracts. So there's going to be a lot of changes after the draft when it comes to different scouting departments around the National Football League.
You brought up the guessing that's going on. I want to touch on that. But first things first, don't forget the Cardinals draft party coming up this Thursday at State Farm Stadium just outside on the Great Lawn. 2 important points, actually 3 now, but the first is admission is free. Second is parking is free. And the third piece of advice really is arrive early. The draft is at 5 o'clock, but certainly because of the highly anticipated nature of this draft and the amount of people that are going to be wanting to be involved and in attendance, I suggest you arrive early, and you get all the information on azcardinals.com/draft party. That's this Thursday, 5 o'clock. I believe everything opens up at 4, but you might want to just wait and hey, people do that on game day. Gates aren't open yet, and there's a line of cars waiting to get in.
Yeah, and you don't want to be that guy parking your car and the Cardinals are making the pick. I know it's a weekday, and we know that, when you get a Thursday night game, there's a traffic. Now you're talking about 60,000 people. Here, you're going to get, hopefully a good crowd, but get there early, because if you're parking at 5, now, the Cardinals only have another pick in the second round, but you don't know if they're going to try to move it back in the first round to get that 5th-year option. They're going to have plenty of choices if they stay at 33, but they could make another trade to get back into the first round. We don't know what else is on the board when it comes to the quarterback position, so I recommend you get there early so you're there to celebrate the first overall pick.
Stay late as well because there's going to be a fireworks show at the end. I heard Mike Jurecki is the celebrity fireworks igniter.
Wow, I'd love to be one of those guys.
True story, though. Fireworks are always
well,
cool.
Yes, that is true. And, Big Red will be there. Cardinals cheerleaders.
Players.
Paul Calvisi is going to be there. I mean, if that alone doesn't get you off the couch, I don't know what will.
Yeah, I mean, again, we haven't been in this position since 1958. Okay, hopefully.
Hey, once every 60 years, I'm okay with that.
So maybe you tell your boss, let me out at 3 today. It's the Cardinals. They're trying to change the franchise around. This is a big deal. Or maybe at noon you start going, oh, I don't feel good. Oh. You just tell the boss I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Don't get fired over it. Now, if you need a permission slip, Grialou will help you out.
Jurecki will help you out as well. Again, azcardinals.com/draft party for all the information, for all the fun that will be happening on Thursday. Now, exactly what will happen on Thursday, who knows? But there are plenty of people that believe they do know. In fact, a couple of tweets from Ian Rappaport earlier today from the NFL Network. He reported the Cardinals brass, which is Keim Kingsbury and team president Michael Bidwell, will have a final meeting over the next couple of days to discuss their options. He added the team has taken, quote, feeler calls, unquote, from teams about trading the number 1 pick. And Rappaport added even further because of this week's voluntary veteran minicamp, that might factor into what the Cardinals decide to do on Thursday because, as Rappaport noted, quote, I'm told he, meaning Rosen, has impressed Cliff Kingsbury thus far, and this week is another opportunity, unquote. And I've heard that before, like, can Rosen do something here over these 2 weeks and now this week coming up to maybe sway people's opinions? And I understand that line of thinking, but if you've dissected film not even since January, but going back to December, I would think part of your decision has been made or you're leaning one way or the other, but I don't know, maybe Rosen has done something. Maybe he's learned this offense or is grasped it quicker than Kingsbury and the coaching staff thought. And you're like, look, he can handle this. Let's see what he does on the field. And then you walk back in on a Wednesday or a Thursday and say, okay, he's my quarterback.
Yeah, the thing is, though, they've set their 120 board. Now, you can make adjustments to it. So you stick to your board based on who you think's going to, they have the option to take the best player in the draft, who they feel is right, whether it's a defensive player, whether it's trading down or taking a quarterback, even though you still have one on the roster. So you mean, Cliff Kingsbury didn't tell somebody at the Combine they're taking Murray or –
they were a package deal as far back as December?
Yeah, that was a report. And then the Cardinals told Murray they were going to take him. That's all nonsense.
Well, just look.
Just all nonsense.
Over the past, 3 or 4 days, a lot more mock drafts. You mentioned Peter King. He's got Kyler Murray going number 1 overall. Kent Summers, AZ Central, who covered the Cardinals for a number of years, believes it's going to be Quinnen Williams at number 1. And then you have our good friend Pete Prisco of CBSSports.com, who was very adamant over the weekend saying, quote, from what I've been told, they're going in a different direction. They're not going to draft Kyler Murray, unquote. About as definitive as you're going to get.
He put that stake in the ground.
Absolutely. And I'm telling you, whether a decision right now as we stand here or sit here in the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, the broadcast studios, on a Monday afternoon, whether a decision has been made or not, I don't know. I would think a final definitive decision has not been made.
Yeah. Obviously. All the work has been done. All the heavy lifting is done. All the scouting has been done, okay? Last week was the last day you can have visits, okay? So I don't know if they used all 30 visits. I assume every team will go 25 to 30. And you're allowed to work out local players, according to reports, they worked out
N'Keal
Harry on Saturday. According to Larry Fitzgerald, he had a good workout. That's what Fitz said. To me, the heavy lifting's done. Now it's a matter of what's your preference. You know what I mean? So all the hard work and all the scouting, that's done. Now it's how do you set your board based on grades?
Okay, so let's say the 120 board is done, and here's what we said. But now to Ian Rappaport's tweet and report, the decision makers, and if you want to just count 3, Michael, Keim, and Kingsbury,
which are,
I mean, those are your decision makers.
They say ownership.
Yeah, it's one person really, but those 3 are making the decision.
Right.
Collectively.
Okay, so let's say the board set. So the football ops and the football general manager and the head coach, they've done their due diligence with their scouting department, and obviously guys like McDonough and Quentin Harris and Adrian Wilson and Drew Grigson, and I'm missing people. Now, okay.
You left out Adrian Wilson. He's going to
be
very
upset.
Oh, okay.
I said A-Dub. So now, okay, are we sure what we like here? Okay, and hopefully no surprises come out between now and 5 o'clock on Thursday, because that's one of the reasons why they're not tipping their hand. And it's nice to hear that maybe they're fielding calls, because now they have options. And, they could have got a call today based on Rappaport's report, and that's why they're huddling up. Okay, are we still thinking A, or now because somebody sweetened the pot, is it B? That's why you're having this last meeting, and I think that meeting will go to next Thursday morning. Not saying you're changing, but more information, more options come out. You definitely got to listen. This is a huge decision they're going to have to make, whether it's first pick or 33rd. I know the first pick we focus so much on, but this is a big decision right here. So, again, you can have the board stacked, and then all of a sudden you get calls for trades. All of a sudden, okay, how far are we willing to go down? What's the number? Is it 5? Is it 6? Because there is a drop-off. Or what are we getting in return? Is somebody going to give us the boat and the house and the backyard? Well, all of a sudden it changes the complexion of what they're thinking. Or, you know what? We're not going to get cute here, and nobody's overblown us for the pick. We're gonna keep the pick. When it's all said and done, we're going to keep the pick. So there's so many options, and again, all those conversations will take place up until 5 o'clock on Thursday.
Yeah, and how the Cardinals have handled all of this is certainly something that has impressed a lot of people. Last week during a conference call, Daniel Jeremiah of NFL Network was asked about just that, how the Cardinals have handled this, and then whether he thinks Rosen breaking his silence, as he did to SITV, might factor in what the Cardinals do, or even trade inquiries about that first pick.
To me, what will impact the Rosen value is if you wait into the draft, and now you start seeing some of these chairs fill up with quarterbacks. You get these teams that have needs and they start filling those needs. Then I think his value starts to go down, because you just can't leverage one team against another team. So I don't think anything he says or does in the meantime will have much impact on his value, his trade value. In terms of how they've handled it, look, I fully understand not divulging what you're going to do. I would just say I find it hard to believe they don't know what they're going to do. So I think you can say, yes, we've made a decision, and no, I'm not going to tell you what it is. You'll find out on draft day as well everybody else. And one of the reasons you do that is because if something were to happen, Kyler Murray, anything were to take place with him, now you're on record as saying he's your guy, and you got to navigate through those waters. And if you just wait until the draft, you're covered there. So I get not saying what your decision is. I just find it hard to believe that decision hasn't already been made.
Look, it wouldn't be the first time, it won't be the last time in which all of a sudden there is someone, whether in the green room or a highly sought-after draft prospect, that is just either at home waiting for the phone call, or, as I said, in the green room waiting, and their name just doesn't get called. And pick after pick after pick, and they drop, they plummet. And everyone wonders why. Well, there's always a reason why, and I guarantee it, teams know more than the rest of us, media, fans, and that's why sometimes if all of a sudden, hey, Jeremy Haskins, you're dropping for whatever reason. You're supposed to be a top 5 pick. Now you're at 15 and still available. Why? Teams know why, and everyone else is left wondering or speculating, but this has all been something that teams have known weeks ago.
All right. 2 things come to mind here. The Laramie Tunsil video last year. Now, who knows if the team was aware of it, but he's dropping. Okay, and then a couple of years ago was Jalen Smith. Remember, the report came out that he may not ever be able to play football.
That's true, yes.
Cowboys took a chance on him. I want to say He went undrafted, right? Did he get?
I think he was drafted, but
okay.
I don't remember when.
But it wasn't a first-round
Correct.
pick where he was projected to go. And so 2 things come to mind if a guy starts to drop. Okay? Medical, which only teams know. And there's some players that the team doctor will say, red flag, you can't draft them. Character, we don't know. Now, we can try to find out, what happened in high school and college. So those are 2 things that happen on draft day. Now, sometimes, and I don't like this because all these mocks, at some point, 40 players have been mocked, okay? And only 32 are going to go. I don't care. And that's where you get the Kyle Laulettas and Mason Rudolph last year where they were going to be 2nd and 3rd round picks, and these guys come into the league with a chip on their shoulder. I mean, Christian Kirk, he was told he's going to be a first-round pick. Now, it worked out for him getting drafted by the Arizona Cardinals. He has a chip on his shoulder. Josh Rosen, according to his agent, he lost money because he was supposed to be a higher pick than 10th overall. These mock drafts are so misleading, and agents will tell players, I talked to this team, you're on the board, they're going to take you. Well, then they're on the board, and they look at their board and say, I can't do it. So 40 guys have been promised they're going to be a first-round pick. That's why number 33 is so important.
Yeah, it is fascinating to go back and look back, and it's going to be fascinating coming up this Thursday to figure out just how that board and what actually does officially happen.
Laramie Tunsil should have been a higher pick. Now, Miami, in a split second, he drops to 13. We're going to take a chance on him. So, again, if you see guys drop, remember 2 things, medical and character. If they've been in mocks, like this Sweat guy, he has a heart issue.
Montez
Sweat. He killed it at the combine. You watch his film, one game he's like, hello, Mac. Next game, you can't see him. So now he's got a heart issue. According to reports, some teams have taken him off their board. Some others haven't. In other words, the doctor said he's going to be fine. It's just you can treat this. If he starts to drop, it's because of medical.
And the other thing you have to keep in mind is that with regards to the Cardinals, there are 9 other picks that they will be making throughout these 3 days, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And number 33 overall is one of those. And you would think, at least many people project, that 33rd pick will be a wide receiver. And, of course, that is something, at least to me, MJ, that when you look at offense and defense and you break down the position groups, wide receiver to me is a need during these 3 days over the draft. Now, Steve Keim, during his pre-draft press conference, disagreed, saying, quote, I wouldn't say need, but there's no doubt that there are a number of receivers in this draft that we feel are quality players and can certainly help us, unquote. The reason I say need is because I count 2 currently on the roster that I, for sure, in ink, can put down. Larry Fitzgerald and Christian Kirk. If you're going to run a bunch of 3 wide sets, who is number 3? And I don't have an answer for you.
I mean,
you hope that maybe it's Kevin White.
That's
if
the
he
reason
can stay
why
healthy.
That's the reason why they signed him.
Perhaps maybe Chad Williams.
Well,
can Trent Sherfield take another step forward? Jalen Tolliver take another step forward?
I believe those guys can, but to sit here and tell you that they're a number 3 wide receiver, that would be misleading you and everyone out there. Listen, okay, you look at the tackle position. Gilbert's on the last year of a contract, plays well, maybe they extend him. Humphreys needs to stay healthy. Corey Cunningham's your swing tackle. I think there's 3 positions in play at 33. Wide receiver, O-line, and let's be honest, if one of these defensive line drop, if you don't go Bosa or Williams at 1, I think they're in play. So they're going to have options. And we want to get into the wide receivers because obviously between N'Keal Harry, now the question becomes, Craig, how many receivers go in the first round? I mean, my guess is 2. We could see 3 tight ends, 1 running back, about 5 to 6 offensive linemen, whether they're combo guys could play tackle guard, could play a little center guard. I think you're going to see those guys go in the 20s. So we could have 11 offensive players and maybe 19 defensive players. So let's go through the list of the top two names out there, I think we're in agreement.
Yeah, the two wide receivers that everyone takes a look at, DK Metcalf out of Ole Miss and Marquise Brown out of Oklahoma. Now, Brown is an interesting case because he's got a Lisfranc injury that he suffered late in the season or underwent surgery in January. So he's been kind of limited, but now is reportedly 100%. And it's just a matter of, okay, do you believe medical, as you keep pointing out, and then there's A.J. Brown, another Ole Miss receiver, and Paris Campbell out of Ohio State, who is not quite tall, but is, as far as a slot receiver is concerned, very good with the football and has great speed, especially out in space. So those are four names, and of course, locally, N'Keal Harry out of Arizona State, went to Chandler High School. You keep him in, and all of a sudden, you've got another DJ Foster, if you will, that kind of just goes from high school to college to the NFL, and that's a name that a lot of people have associated at number 33.
Now, I did see a mock today. They had the Seahawks taking him. It was the beat writers around the country that cover the teams on a daily basis. Sam Farmer, LA Times. You can go to his Twitter account and see the exact. Ken Summers, obviously columnist, former beat writer. He picked for the Cardinals. He took Quentin Williams. So Harry was
a first-round pick.
Based on a beat writer.
Correct.
It was the Seahawks. And clearly, I mean, they only got 4 draft picks, so I think they're going to trade back. I know you can't trade in mock drafts. So let's say, hypothetically, Metcalf and Brown are off the board. You mentioned A.J. Brown, 6 feet, 226. Paris Campbell, 5'11", 205. Calvin Harmon, NC State, 6'2", 221. N'Keal Harry, 6'3", 228. Now, the guy that I'm intrigued by is Deebo Samuel, South Carolina, 5'11", 214. Then you got Calvin Ridley's brother, Riley Ridley, Hakeem Butler from Iowa State, Andy Isabella. And I'm not just going through these names. What I'm going to say here is I think from 33 to 50, that's where you're going to see a run on wide receivers. That's how deep this wide receiver class is after the first two. We would have more than – we've had Corey Davis, John Ross, Mike Williams go in the top 10 in previous drafts, okay? Teams are cutting back a little bit because with the defensive players. So, to me, you can get the same player at 33 to almost 45 to 50. I mean, it depends what you like. You like a slot guy, you want a speed guy, you want a physical receiver. Now, the only knock on Harry would be, can he get off press coverage? Now, that's something you can learn. It would probably take him a year, but when you're a second-round pick, you're likely going to be active on game day. I don't know how much he would play on teams. So it'd be interesting. But do the Cardinals have Harry ranked in their top 33? That's the question. Is he at 35? Is he at 38? We don't know that. We're never going to know it. That's what it's going to come down to. Do they have any of these other receivers ranked higher than him? They like him. They were impressed with his workout, according to Fitz. So he's in the mix. But now a question, you're not going to take – if he's ranked 38 and you're picking at 33, you're not taking him.
You're not going to go for a reach.
No. I mean, and there could be an offensive tackle or an offensive lineman in there that, to me, you're planning for the future. Again, we went through the tackle position. You got 2 guys that Humphries has to stay healthy and Gilbert in the last year. You got Corey Coleman, but he was a 7th-round pick. So – And I do think D-line, if one of these guys drop, like a Dexter Lawrence, I don't think he's going to drop. So, to me, at that point, wide receiver, O-line, and I would say D-line. So, they're going to have their options, but I do think you'll get a quality wide receiver. And I heard you on earlier with Bickley and Murata. I don't disagree with you. I think they should draft 2 receivers.
Yeah, just based off and flood the position and see who can handle what is being asked of them with this offense.
Bring in some undrafted free agents. Maybe they didn't get invited to the combine, but they're a guy that can catch the ball in traffic. Maybe they'll put up big numbers in college like this Andy Isabella. Now, I don't think he'll be a first-round pick. He's a slot guy, but he put up mass numbers. I don't know if you'd take him at 33. There's better options. But the question now becomes, where is Harry on their board? If they stay at 33, where is he ranked? That will dictate if they're going to take him or another player or position.
We talked about Harry as well as the other wide receivers in this 2019 draft class at the Scouting Combine with Greg Cosell, the senior producer for NFL Films and the co-host of ESPN's NFL Matchup.
Harry, to me, is an interesting guy because he's big, he's physical. In college, he rarely separated from corners. which is always a concern to me as you transition him to the NFL. Can he win against man coverage, quality NFL man coverage? Now, winning is a relative term because winning doesn't mean you have to truly separate. You can certainly make contested catches. There's a lot of guys who win by making contested catches, and he's a strong kid. But he did not win in a traditional sense in college against man. He was not a separator. But having said that, now you become a scheme player. Now is he a motion guy? Is he a guy you put in motion to get free access so he can present his open quickly in a route and the ball comes out and you hit him and he runs after catch and he's a big guy. So, you have to factor that in. There's different ways receivers can be used. I mean, you just think of the Super Bowl on that final drive where Julian Edelman went in motion, I think, on 3 plays in a row. He gets what we call a stack release behind another receiver. You can't press him when that happens. He gets a free release. He gets into his route. There's ways to take receivers who have ball skills and are big and physical but are not necessarily great separators versus man. There's ways to use those kinds of receivers and make them effective.
I know you've scouted at least a dozen, maybe 18 players in DJ Metcalf. I looked at the numbers. I know he's coming off an injury. He's scheduled to work out here. I mean, where do you see him playing in the NFL? Like, is he going to be in the outside, inside? I mean, where do you see him projected to be?
Probably outside. When you watch someone like Metcalf, he's big and he's explosive. Yeah. So you start thinking about who are those receivers in the NFL? Who are those kinds of receivers? Is he Julio Jones? I'm always a little loath to compare someone to Julio Jones who's going to be a Hall of Famer. But Julio Jones is big and fast. Metcalf is big and fast. I think he's stiffer than Julio. In other words, I think Metcalf's a little more straight line-ish, whereas Julio's got a little wiggle to him. He's a special guy. But then you think of Mike Evans, who's 6'4.5", 232. You think of Josh Gordon, who may never play again, but I mean he's a big guy with very good movement. So you start thinking of Metcalf in that category. I think he's a little straight line, but he is explosive for a big man. I mean, he ran by people in college and did show the ability to sort of separate with the ball in the air where he had a little extra burst. So, I mean, there were times he ran by off-coverage college corners easily. So he's a big, explosive, but kind of a straight-line linear guy.
Good scouting report from Greg Cosell, who obviously works for ESPN, the NFL matchup show. He's also dialed in when it comes to quarterbacks. I think it was a great scouting report on N'Keal Harry. Again, I go back to the Colorado game, and they had a wide receiver who was very similar to N'Keal Harry. And after that game, I thought Rod Likens, the offensive coordinator.
Oh, yes, Rod Likens.
I thought he did a great job moving him around. So he wasn't just an outside guy. After that game, I thought in the punt return that he returned for a touchdown against USC, he retrieved it at his 4-yard line. He's running down the sidelines. USC has some players. That is game speed. Somebody was chasing him, and he turned it on. I think he's gritty. I think he's physical. I think he can be really good in the 50-50 balls. Now, we mentioned this last week. Marty Herney, the general manager of the Panthers, did their presser. He was asked about this class, and he said, I don't care how tall they are. I don't care how fast they are. Could they get separation? That was what he said he's looking for. He said, I don't care in the red zone if I got a 6'5" receiver or a 5'11" receiver. Tell me they're getting separation. At this level, that's why we're talking about the Cardinals playing man-to-man press coverage. You jam that guy at the line of scrimmage, you're taking him out of the play. Now, I did talk to a scout. They said it's not something he can't learn, but it's probably going to take a year getting off press coverage. But he feels the physicality of going down the field. You could move him around. Again, I like what Likens did after that Colorado game because they started moving around, and look at his numbers after the Colorado game. But I do remember that punt return for touchdown. I think it was 96 yards, could be off by a yard or two. He ran all the way down the sidelines. He beat a couple guys, and he had game speed. I think he's a gritty player. I just don't know where they have him ranked on the board, but I think that is a really good scouting report on N'Keal Harry.
Yeah, and Keim last week cited Harry's ability to run after the catch and called them, quote, unique skills. So the skill set is there, but it's the separation that people certainly have a question about. All right, time for the Bird Gang to sound off here on this Monday afternoon. Your questions via social media using the hashtag CardsCover2, hashtag CardsCover2. Let's begin with Instagram. Okay, this is funny. Username @everyone. Who will be the first pick? And then they followed up with LOL. Someone was being funny.
It's going to be a player that either plays on offense or defense.
I guarantee it won't be a special teamer.
No, let's hope not.
Special team specialist.
Yes. I mean, if you're drafted 2 to 7, you may have to play on teams. They're going to draft an offense or defensive player with the first pick.
Well said. All right. A real question now. Instagram, user @smh.drew. If you could be in the draft room, what would you be most interested in seeing?
The draft board.
You'd go right for the board?
Yeah, because everything else, I mean, we hear all this stuff. I'm never going to see it, but that would just to take a look at it. I mean, the 120 board, how they have this guy ranked versus another guy you think is equal to. To me, that's fascinating. And I'm never going to see it.
No. Don't think so? No?
Never.
Sneak peek? No. Years down the... Okay, never mind. Last question from Instagram, user @Robles_era. What kind of impact could our later round picks have on the roster?
When you're picking first in each round, I mean, we talk about 10 draft picks, and they got 3 in the 7th. Maybe they parlay that to get a 5th round pick. But again, they did draft Corey Cunningham. I think all 10 is going to have a tough time. But when you get the first pick in the first round, second round, third round, fourth round, usually guys that are drafted in the third or fourth rounds are active on game day. Not a guarantee. We didn't watch DJ Humphrey set out the entire year. Robert Kemdici had a hard time getting on the field. But I would think depth-wise, they're going to be set up great for the future. It's just a matter of how do they fit in and what they're expecting from. We talked about Harry. If he's the pick, there's going to be a learning curve. It's going to be a learning curve for a lot of guys. So I think rounds 2 through 7 is definitely going to be guys that can rotation guys. I would hope the first and second and third round pick are possibly starters, and then you're setting yourself up for the future when it comes to depth on the roster.
Moving to Twitter, a question here from @Cardinals_31. Who do you think is the most talented player overall, regardless of position, the most talented player in this draft class?
Talented player, so that would mean a skill position player?
Unless you thought an offensive lineman had good feet, or Quinnen Williams, certainly a lot of people believe his athleticism. And that brings up the comparison to Aaron Donald.
Well, I like Devin White. I think he's a game changer. And I don't know if he's going to slip past number 5. We'll see what the Bruce Arians and Jason Licht do. To me, he's very similar to Darrell Washington. Now, Washington had character issues coming out of college. He dropped to the second round. I just think he can go from sideline to sideline. Now, I do think, again, he doesn't play that premier position. He doesn't play quarterback, left tackle, defensive end, or corner. We know we don't see any corners going, possibly no left tackles that high. He, to me, can be a guy in the league for 10 to 12 years. So athleticism-wise, and there's other players. Greedy Williams, he doesn't like to tackle.
Well, DK Metcalf in that case, too.
DK Metcalf, but if I had to guess, nothing against Bosa and Williams and Josh Allen, I would go Devin White.
Good selection. I like that one.
Hey, listen, people don't want to talk about this. There's going to be Hall of Famers from this class.
Aaron Donald, not a top 10 pick. J.J. Watt, not a top 10 pick.
The thing is, we just don't know. There are going to be, every class has Hall of Famers. It just happens. Just don't know which ones.
Yeah.
Could be a 5th round. Could be a 6th round pick like Tom Brady.
199.
But you don't know. I mean, all the money and research that goes into this, and it's still kind of I don't want to say crapshoot because I know how much teams invest in this stuff. They've done their homework. But again, as Steve says, you don't know what's between the ears, and you don't know what's in the chest.
Appreciate the Bird Gang sounding off here on this Monday. Keep them coming, those questions, using the hashtag CardsCover2, hashtag CardsCover2. We'll do it again on Wednesday. And then, of course, Thursday is the draft. All right, we teased this at the top of the show. Pat Tillman lost his life 15 years ago today. Everyone knows his story, but not everyone knows him as the person. I want to bring in our producer, Jim Omohundro, who knows or knew Pat very well and had more dealings with him than I did. I know, MJ, you covered him a long time as well. But certainly Pat Tillman, 15 years ago, does not seem that long ago. But for what he meant to not only Cardinal fans, NFL fans, Arizona State fans, and just Arizona and this country in general, far exceeds what he did on the football field.
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, and, you know, we look back at his legacy and obviously what he sacrificed. And, you know, Ken Summers wrote the story when we found out today. I mean, it was what happened. Pat obviously turned down a lucrative deal from the Rams. And people are like, why is he turning down to come back to play for 7-12? Well, at some point he walks in McGinnis's office, who was the head coach at the time, and he said, I got to talk to you. And he said, I'm enlisting, joining the Army. And McGinnis, I don't know what he said afterwards. I'm sure he didn't say, are you serious? Because we know Pat's a different thinker and a deep thinker. He said, well, how do you want me to tell the media? He goes, you're gonna tell the media. I'm out of here. And he walked out. So at the time, Paul Jensen was the media relations director. Matt calls Jensen, and he says, I'm coming down, and I want you to get a hold of Darren Urban, Ken Summers, and myself. So we go to that back closet. McGinnis says, put your notepads down. And he tells us, Pat has just informed me that he's enlisting. Darren's mouth was open like he was catching flies. Kent was smiling, I remember, and I was just one of those, wow. What? And then obviously word trickled out, but I remember that day like it was yesterday, sitting there when Mac was telling us. But obviously, you know, his run's coming up on Saturday. Hopefully he gets a great crowd. Over the years, they've done a wonderful job. The foundation, I went to Pints for Pat at Rula Bula a couple weeks ago, bought some glasses there. I mean, until you meet the guy, you'll never understand. He's one guy that would walk in the press room, and that back in the day we would have like Newsweek, and he wasn't coming here for Sports Illustrated. He was reading actual news that was happening. He was sitting in the press room, he was waiting for someone, maybe to do a phone interview, but he was reading like Times Magazine, Newsweek. He was not reading any sports, and that, you know, when I go back and think of that. That's what kind of person he was.
We're going to close the show with a special video, Pat Tillman, but I want Omo to set this up because, one, it's a video that he found, and then, two, it's video that he has certainly kept for a long, long time. It means a lot to him. So why don't you set the stage here, Omo, as far as what this video is of Pat Tillman?
Well, this video originated in the summer of 2001. It was, I want to say it was June, kind of during the final OTAs, mini camps and whatnot, before they broke for the summer. And, you know, speaking of what Mike was talking about how he always had a thirst for different knowledge, not just sports, he was well-rounded. So the former director of broadcasting, Craig Amazine, had an idea to bring in a sports psychologist to interview Pat. And that psychologist had a book that was just coming out. It was called Mind Gym, G-Y-M, Mind Gym. And so we gave the book to Pat Tillman and just said, hey, you know, you mind talking about this tomorrow? Maybe thumb through it, and we'll talk to you about it tomorrow. He's like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll take a look at it. Came in, and Craig asked Pat, hey, did you have a chance to look at this book before this interview? He goes, no, dude, I read the whole thing. So this thing, it wasn't like, 100 pages. This was a 200 or 300 page book, and he read the whole thing in less than 24 hours and came back and was referring to specific chapters. Anyway, the sports psychologist, his name was Gary Mack. He worked with a lot of local, like the spring training teams that would come down, mainly the Seattle Mariners. So that's kind of the background. That's who you'll hear asking all the questions to Pat. And when you watch this, keep in mind this was about 2 months before 9/11, and he just had an interesting perspective on a lot of things. And you'll hear him give some answers that really foreshadowed a lot of things that were to come for him, specifically his joining the Army and leaving millions of dollars on the table, and everyone knows the story. So Gary Mack is the interviewer, the late Gary Mack. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago. But It's very good, and it's probably one of the best Pat Tillman features I think the Arizona Cardinals have put together over the years. So, that's kind of the setup for it.
Yeah, some great insight on Pat Tillman, the person, and, of course, Pat Tillman, gone, but certainly not forgotten.
Tell me about today's game.
I'm not much of a spokesman.
That's okay. You're an ASU guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand you hit pretty hard.
No, it's not me, different guy.
What do you think is the most important mental aspect in preparing for an NFL game?
For me personally, I think visualization, I don't know if it's necessarily for a game per se, but just in general, I think you kind of have to not only visualize plays and then making plays, but also being successful, seeing your career improve. I think once you stop being creative in your head about where you're going, you kind of stop going.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm wrong. I could just be flattering myself because you feel like you're doing it. I don't know, but I feel like if you're able to see it happen, then it might be able to happen.
On a scale of 1 to 10, on game day, what would be your ideal performance number?
Good question. I don't know why, just 8 is what popped into my head.
Well,
I don't know. It's sometimes, in college or when I was younger, sometimes, you get real fired up for games, and after a while, and that's good. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that as long as you're able to control yourself, you don't run out of energy. But for me, it took a little more out of me than I wanted to, and so now I try to, by game time, get up to about 8. Before the game, I really try to relax, try to laugh a little bit, do whatever, because during the week is when you do all your preparation. On game day, you should be relaxed and ready to go. And if you're not, it's usually because you didn't do enough during the week. So I try to squeeze in, do all my thinking beforehand, so that when I get there, I can just kind of mellow out, and then maybe show up to the field at about a 5, and then kind of kick it up. And by game time, I'm running at about an 8.
Okay, so when you're on the line during the national anthem, that's about 8?
National anthem is about a 10, actually. I get fired up for that.
Okay.
For whatever reason, I have a patriotic bone to me. So I really, emotionally, I actually let myself go for that, but then I come right back down.
What motivates you the most?
I don't know. I get a lot of satisfaction out of my family being proud of me, my brothers. I care what they think and how they feel, and I want them to be proud of what I'm doing. I want to push myself, I don't necessarily want to be, I think you got to get out of your comfort zone. If you're kind of comfortable all the time, it's like if you're skiing, if you're not falling, you're not trying. So I kind of want to push myself a lot. I don't know, different type of things. I would say it's more external as far as I do a lot of the stuff I do because whether my parents or my brothers or my my girlfriend, whether they care or not, I feel like they do, and it motivates me. I kind of like that. Stupid motivation, but that's mine.
If you were going to retire, what would you want your parents and your coaches and teammates saying about you?
Well, geez. Well, hopefully I'll give them more to say at this point. I haven't been here too long. I guess just, I don't know, maybe the passion word I talked about, I don't know, maybe that's kind of important to me that I tried, that I was, I think every player, you want to kind of lay it down, you want people to think that you're kind of selling out for the team or selling out for football or whatever. And that's, kind of, I don't, want to be dramatic, I don't know, but that's what I'd like.
You
that's
play from the heart.
Kind of, yeah. The heart thing is kind of important to me.
What would you do if you weren't playing football?
I have no idea. I've actually given it some thought. I don't know.
Everybody leaves the game now.
Oh, I know it's going to happen eventually, and I've thought about it. I don't know. It's weird. I mean, school-wise, I mean, I could go. I did well in school, so I could probably go out. I was a business major, so I could probably go out and get a job. But you know, you don't want to do something you're not passionate about. So I've actually given it some thought, and I haven't figured it quite out yet.